Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights.
All right, we have Roland Brewer here with Realm Health. It's a pleasure to have you, Roland, and I think we're a little closer to your backyard than we normally are. So
yeah, we are. This was it was about a 3.5, 4 hour drive.
Yeah,
so
not
nice.
so bad as opposed to coming all the way down to Nashville. So thank you for being here and kind of talking through your story.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
As always, I mean, anytime I can be at one of y'all's events, it's great. So
Perfect.
It's been really good.
If you could describe Realm Health in just a quick phrase or sentence, how would you do it?
Realm Health in a quick phrase. Insurance is our business, service is our passion.
Yeah, so we'll get into Realm Health and what all that means, but
Sure.
I don't think that's where you started. So,
No.
Coming out of your early years, where was your initial career taking you?
I don't know if we want to go back that far, but I will say this funny story because my wife, after our kids were grown and we moved away from San Marcos, Texas, we lived up in Dallas, and when we'd go back and visit, one of the things that she would make sure she said was when we would drive into our college town, San Marcos, she would literally go, kids, this is where Dad went to school, and she'd point at the river and the beach volleyball courts, and she said, and this is where Mom went to school, and it was the actual university. So that's that. I mean, she did it every time we would drive into town, as she wanted to set the standard. But I did not fully expect to ever be an insurance person. I think the insurance guy is the one that everybody wants to avoid in the room, right? So. I started off, I was a golf professional, and when I say that, I wasn't the guy that you see on TV. I did play a few back in the day that were Hogan events, but I was a teaching pro. I worked as an assistant and was at a couple of different courses. In fact, I was at 3 different courses, but the last one that I was at, that's how I got in the insurance business. I was at a very exclusive club in Austin, and it was nothing but retired people. And here's a young guy in his 30s, and I'm like, what is this guy doing here? He's here during the middle of the day, and and he had wads of cash, and I'm like, what is this guy do? And he actually told me he did 403Bs, and I'm like, okay. And
that doesn't answer the question, actually.
No. So come to find out that was you had to have an insurance license, and so that's how I got into business. And I worked in school districts, talking to teachers about alternative investments, and so that was a little over 30 years ago now. So
it's been a few years now. Do you still golf?
I do whenever I can. But again, I have to come to all of y'all's events, so I really don't have time.
We're taking all your weekends, right?
Actually, I play a few tournaments just when people ask for 4-man scramble stuff. I do it for fun. I just hardly ever play anymore. I don't really have time.
Okay, but they know that they can count on you for the right tournament. They'll pull you out. Yeah.
Well, there has to be some incentive. I need tequila there, and that kind of stuff.
They also know how to get you out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'll go. Sure.
So you find this guy, you find the insurance space. Was it all roses from there?
No. In fact, it wasn't. I learned. It was really interesting. I learned how to and how not to control money both ways. Once I learned the business and I started making a little money, I went from truly in the golf business. I was making $12,500, married. My wife quit working after 6 months and said, we're going to have kids, and I want to stay at home. So naturally, again, I'm like, okay, great. But the concept at that young age just didn't hit me. And so all of a sudden I'd go make $10,000 in commissions basically, and next thing you know, I didn't work for a few days, few weeks, because I'm like, I just made $10,000. This is pretty good.
And made my whole previous year.
And the cycle continued to kind of go, oh, wait a minute, you got to work steady. And so it taught me a lot back then, and it was good. But rough times rough times for sure, and also really good times. So
yeah. So you started to kind of stabilize and progress through there. Where did your insurance career take you next? Like, where was the next big step?
Yeah.
for
So
you?
well, the next thing I actually went to learn more in the estate planning side. I had met a guy that actually he found me, had heard about me speaking at different teachers events and schools. So he came to me and said, "Hey, I want to teach you the estate planning side. Would you be interested?" And I was. And again, extremely young looking at that time. And the one thing that he told me is like, okay, you can't dress now like you're going into the schools. You actually have to put on a suit, a tie. You have to look like the banker.
Yeah.
And so he taught me those concepts. It was a good time. And then really, I started recruiting insurance agents to do what I was doing. And I found that I had that niche. And so I started building up agents that were working for our company and did that for quite a while before I fell into what I would say the more benefit style space.
Okay. So at what point throughout all this did you decide, hey, maybe I should do this on my own?
Probably about 10 years ago, maybe. It just clicked. I'm like, I keep doing this for everybody else. Why don't I do this for myself? And so it was about 10 years ago, and it was the best move I've ever made. It's really, really been a good journey, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I know this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. I mean, even when you have the so-called retired side, I won't retire.
Yeah, this is the dream you've built and continue to live out.
I like finding. I mean, the big deal is I like finding solutions, and so that's what, going all the way back to when I first got into business. 403Bs are everywhere in the school systems, but what made it different is the agent who introduced me to this, his was all solution oriented. So ever since then, everything that I've done on the insurance side has been a solution oriented side, even to the estate planning. I mean, there's estate planning, insurance agents all over the country, but it's truly finding that person's needs and finding a solution, not just saying, hey, you need a trust, you need some annuities, that's one thing, but truly finding the solution.
And I don't think that's how many people think about insurance. When they're thinking about buying it, using it, or even insurance agents, I don't think that's always a common thought. So what's been kind of your mantra as you've worked in this space to try to keep this a solutions-oriented, not transactional type of relationship in insurance? Well,
I think really coming into this very specific space in this version of a transportation space, the delivery side, it's a unique set of drivers and employees. They're not your typical over-the-road trucker, which most insurance companies look at and go, that's a tough space to insure. From the benefit side, because it's typically an unhealthier market. So whenever we came into this space, we realized that these were different employees, different drivers. The owners themselves, again, small business owners. I mean, a lot of them, I'd say our average probably group is probably got 20 employees, but we have larger and we have smaller, but you got to find something that's really unique for them. And so that's one of the things that we did is we went out, and once we understood it, we went to insurance companies, insurance carriers, and said, here's the marketplace, and we want to build products around that, whether it's health, life, dental, vision, whatever it may be. And so they all bought into our concept and understanding of the industry, and I think we've kind of really taken pride in that. It's been something big for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat, yesterday I was at one of y'all's events, and I was literally sitting in there learning more and more every day. I want to understand what that business owner is going through, because it's how do we address what they're going through with a solution of benefits. How can I make that work?
Yeah, how do you fit those pieces together?
Yeah. So one thing for business owners to understand about insurance is not a one size fits all.
So let's take it back just a little bit. What was the trigger where you started Realm, actually? Realm as it is today?
Yeah, so that was about 6 years ago. We were already writing in the transportation space with the large trucking companies that are out there, the J.B. Hunts, the Swift, et cetera. And when we stumbled upon FedEx Ground, we literally had no idea. In fact, a young man come running into my office, told me, he goes, "Oh my gosh, I've got this big company," and I'm like, "Who's the big company?" And when he told me FedEx, I'm like, "Yeah, we can't
sell
do
with
that."
FedEx,
and I had no idea that there was this whole contractor concept. And so I went to my old business partner and told him about it. So we created, basically at that point, we created Realm Health. And so we started very much just focusing in this space. And so we built everything around that.
Yeah.
That was 6 years ago.
Yeah, so when you found the space, obviously it's great, like you hear there's a lot of opportunity, but what do you think was it about the space, FedEx in particular, when you first found it, that made it an attractive market, or was something that you guys thought you could really impact?
Well, first thing, we found out it was underserved. We found out that there's two sides on the FedEx Ground side. There's the P&D side and the line haul. On the P&D side, we had found out that there was roughly 95 to 98% of contractors that were not able to provide benefits. And then on the line haul side, it was over 70% were not providing. And that just, when we saw that, we said, all right, we've got something, and we've got to build the solutions for that. I like to say today, we've obviously made an extremely large impact on that. And it's even opened contractors' eyes to understand, even if they don't go with us, that it is affordable, and there are ways and there are solutions to be able to get. So prideful in that.
And I know that you guys have done a fantastic job in the last 6 years, but when you think about that initial barrier of 98% of contractors are doing nothing, how do you go set it about building a product and telling a story that actually starts to open eyes for that community?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was it was easy for me with the insurance carriers. I mean, it honestly was. I mean, I showed them the demographic. I showed them, just that whole concept, and all the carriers that jumped on at that time bought into my story. But the harder part was the contractors, because again, they had been facing the same problem over and over, that insurance rates were too expensive. First and foremost, they were too expensive for their employees, so nobody was buying, which kept them from being able to have the participation that they needed, because there's participation requirements for most insurance companies. But then the other part was, not only was it too expensive for the employees, but it was too expensive for the contractors. I mean, the profit margins that they have, even though they're good, it caused a problem for them to be able to try to have to contribute that much money. It was cutting way too much into the pocketbook.
Yeah, and if you've got to pay for big expensive benefits and no one's using them, it just felt like a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, we always say, and I've heard you, Josh, say it too. So, if you can provide benefits, but if nobody can afford them and nobody gets them, then they're not benefits. They're just not. They're just a piece of paper somewhere. So
they're an expense, and that's it. And I think that's really how people thought about it. Is just this is a line item that I get no value out of.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point. It was just an expense that was too expensive.
So how did you start to see the minds change? Like, what were the kind of the trigger points you saw for contractors to start to be like, okay, you know what, this is something that can actually provide value for me?
Well, I think first and foremost that we created entry points for the employer and the employee that made the concept and understanding for the owner much easier. When I say that, it was about the participation levels. So we didn't have to have 75% of eligible employees. I didn't have to have 50% contribution from the employer. And so being able to go in and tell that story made it extremely impressive for them. The other part I think that's important is most of the time when they're looking at this major medical style product that it was basically a one size fits all is what they were trying to make it. Well, that's a problem. I mean, when you have different variety of employees, I mean, you might have a 26-year-old that says, the only thing I want is telemedicine. They maybe don't want full-blown health insurance. Maybe they're 25, 24, and they're still on mom and dad's plan.
They don't need it.
But they would like some benefit of some sort. So being able to say, look, you don't have to have this one size fits all. We have a variety of products that you can pick from. And I think that's what truly opened the door. And then last but not least, the owner not having to write checks to multiple different carriers. It was one place and one place only, which was us. We diversified all that.
Yeah, and I know I've heard you talk about it a lot before, but I think the other big piece of it is allowing the contractor to actually set what they wanted to contribute and basically say, them not having to be the ones to actually pick the plans.
Yeah, well, think about it. Listen, insurance is complicated. It just is. So they're trying to run a business. Most of them do not have an HR person or a benefits specialist within their business. So, for them to try to pick plans that, again, they got to make fit each and every person in their company, that's a difficult situation. So that was a big problem, and again, we were able to show that solution. I think was a big deal.
Yeah. So you start to get some critical mass. Did you find what was harder, P&D or line haul, to start to change minds?
Well, the P&D was harder to change minds in one sense because again you had 98%. And I would say that they have more of a younger demographic. So again, it was getting the concept that they do want benefits, but they just might not want a full-blown plan. Maybe they just want dental. So getting them to understand that part. Then on the line haul side, what we had to do, because we stepped in immediately to the P&D, and so we were building and catching the momentum through that. So then at that point it was trying to create the products that were more necessary for the line haul side, because again, you just have a different demographic. The pay scale is different, profit margins are different. So we had to create a more complex, I'll say, product set for them to be able to have. Now they still have access to everything, but I would say that momentum, though, at the P&D side is what really got us going.
Okay.
For sure.
And we kind of glossed over it too, but what are the actual normal requirements for health insurance that are pretty difficult for an average small business owner versus what you all have provided?
Sure. The main carriers of the world, we call it the BUCAs of the world, they do have some criteria, and it is typically 75% of eligible employees need to participate. And again, that's eligible employees. That's an important note. And then typically, again, they're going to want 50% contribution from the employer of the lowest premium plan. So let's say they had a $2,500 or $5,000 deductible plan. If that premium was $500, then that meant the employer would have to do $250 of that. That was the big entry point there. Then you have the concept that you have to throw in that if they're 50 or above employees, then the IRS regulations come in. And so at that point, you actually have to contribute. You have to provide ACA qualified plans, and it makes it a little different. And then what we did is, once we understood that, now we have to, over 50, we have to abide by the same IRS rules. There's a lot more steps to that, probably too much for this conversation. But what we realized again is under the 50, being able to tell an employer, look, if you just have two people that buy something, and again, even if they don't buy the health plan, if they just bought life insurance or an accident plan, we don't care. As long as there's two, we were allowing them, the carriers were to form a group. And then the contribution side, we said, look, I don't know your profit margin. I don't know what you have available. So whatever you can afford to help offset those costs for your employees, we're going to let you contribute. So again, now over 50, they have their rule of what they have to do. But so that made that entry point for these contractors much easier to say, okay, I can do that. I just can't contribute hundreds of dollars at that point. So, and some could.
Yeah, but they have the option, and that's really what it's all about. Is they've got the flexibility to make it work for their business and their employees without having to do anything crazy. They just come to you, and your team handles the rest.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think when we think about healthcare and benefits, it's often purely okay, this is just going to help me on recruiting. But I know that one of the big impacts this also has is on retention. So how do you think about it? What have you seen impact there?
Yeah, so the retention side is really the big deal. Let's start with the line haul side. Today, I mean, if you do not have benefits, number one, you're not going to recruit them, but you're certainly not going to retain them because there's trucks going up and down these highways every day that on the back of them, you know, you'll see a little sign saying, hey, we're hiring and we have benefits. And so it's a crucial point, and it provides that stickiness both on the line haul and the P&D side. But, you know, the P&D side, there's always a revolving door. I mean, there just is.
It's a high turnover business.
But it's about slowing the revolving door down. And what we have found is by providing benefits that are flexible and affordable for both the employer and the employee, that we've been able to show that employers are able to maintain those employees much longer. So that revolving door has slowed down tremendously.
Yeah, and it is so much more expensive to have to come in and keep on bringing more employees. So the slowing of that door is not just like, oh, that's nice, I keep my employees longer. That is a significant expense saving to not have to retrain, rehire, re-recruit all the time.
Yeah, I've heard some, you know, obviously some crazy different numbers of what it takes to hire a person. So all the ads to recruit them, then you got to put them through the training, et cetera. So that's an expensive process that again, you can slow that down throughout the year by providing something far less expensive in your case.
And it's an expense that works for your business, and just the fact that they have it and use it means that it actually does provide the retention benefit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and because it's not just the expense to bring them in, it's the efficiency cost that bringing in a new driver, they're not doing the same as the driver that left for at least a few weeks, a few months longer.
That's right.
And so it is an exponential continuing benefit to keep these drivers for longer.
Yep, absolutely.
So you all have come into the space and really, you know, taken it by storm in a lot of ways and changed the way that contractors think about healthcare. What is it that you think about Realm helps you remain kind of on top? You know, no one else is coming in and taking all of your market share. How do you continue to differentiate and be the one that's able to provide these benefits? Well,
I think number one, first and foremost, us understanding the marketplace, trying to educate ourselves through events like yesterday, that really help us out to understand the pain points, the pluses, minuses of the business. But I think that's probably the biggest thing first and foremost. After that, I would say that then it's us going in and getting with carriers to provide solutions. So we're ever changing. So we're changing right along with the contractor. So if this style of products we need to enhance, we go back to the carrier and say we need enhancements to these products because the demographics changing. So being able to do that, and then I also say our flexibility, because again, that's been the big piece that's been there from day one. For us being able to be flexible. In fact, you know, on a lot of our contractors, they actually pay a month in arrears.
Oh, wow.
So that's a big
that's not
deal.
Trivial. Yeah.
No, and so we've been able to do that. So it's just being able to be concept oriented, solution oriented, and trying to constantly grow with the industry. I mean, we're constantly, every year, we're adding new products. I mean, heck, you know, last year, and I don't know if great to jump this far ahead, but you know, last year, I mean, we launched a whole business succession planning side of the business.
Talk about it,
and again, you know, that was a big piece. We actually had a contractor who started all the way back in the RPS days, passed away, and had a wife, 2 kids. They were grown. The children they had nothing to do with the business, and the wife didn't have anything to do with the business.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, he passed unexpectedly. They lost the business. I mean, because nobody had any idea. So something as simple as finding out something tragic like that helped us find a way that we needed to provide a solution. And what we found out, nobody was talking business succession planning and business continuity. So
what does that mean for a contractor? What are you helping do there when you say business succession
well, so
planning?
a lot of them are obviously have their attorneys, but it's putting something in place so that way, if not only death, but one of the things that's overlooked, what if they become disabled, and they can't work in the business anymore? And a lot of the contractors, it really is them. Now, I'm not saying they don't have a BC that handles things, but it's truly them in their...
They're the entrepreneur and it lives with them.
Listen, it's their families, typically, it's their family's largest asset.
Correct.
So when something like that tragic happens, you gotta have things in place. And all of us, for the most part, like if I'm in a room, I say, all right, how many of you at least have a will for your family? And almost all the hands go up, right? How many of you have a trust, a little more advanced, a little more detailed, and you have hands. I said, but how many of you have something similar to that for your business? And they don't think of it that way. They just think, oh yeah, this is my business, I've got a will. And I'm like, no, you need something very specific for that. So, attorneys will draw up buy-sell agreements and other legal documents that are there. We don't do that part. Okay. But we do provide, so those buy-sell agreements have to be funded. So you're either gonna have cash to be able to fund it, assets to be able to fund it, or you gotta come up with something else. That something else typically is a life insurance style policy. Okay. And so we provide those along with the attorneys for the other documents.
Got it. Okay.
And then, from that point, we even key person insurance. That was key. So being able to provide that, to be honest, those first 4.5 years, we weren't even providing life insurance for SBA loans. And that's another big deal. So again, we're constantly trying to add something. Our newest on the health side, we have some really incredible deductible copay style plans that are ACA compliant. And I will tell you, the larger operations, all of the line haul are jumping on plans that are like that. And we've been able to get incredible rates. The underwriting's really good on it. And so it's a solid, stable product.
Okay. And speaking of rates, I know one of your big things you always talk about is that your rates have remained your rates for years.
Well, now 6 years.
Yeah. So how is that possible in the insurance space? It doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, I think it was, again, understanding this demographic, working really well with the carriers. So not always going to be the cheapest, not always going to be the most expensive, but it was finding that middle road with the carriers where the underwriters were comfortable with the demographic. And so, making sure that the price points were set right. And again, obviously we've done well. And listen, there's a lot of utilization. There's a lot of utilization. The other piece that we've done, and I know I talk about it a lot with you, is it's our advocacy department. Listen, the advocacy part is extremely key. So that's helped us manage. So think of this. If we can send a driver to go get an MRI at a place, and we can actually say, hey, look, if you go 2 buildings down, the MRI is going to be $1,000 as opposed to $3,000.
Right.
So if we can help pre-negotiate or talk in that way, that helps what the insurance has to actually pay for that procedure. So you take that on everything, whether it be doctor visits, MRIs, CAT scans, all the way to major surgeries. I give you another one. Advocacy department. One of the drivers was actually having to go have an orthoscopic knee surgery. Okay. So same doctor. He worked in 2 different hospitals. The procedure was almost $20,000 difference in hospital B as opposed to hospital A. Same doctor.
Yeah, jeez.
So it's just understanding those things. So that saved the insurance company roughly $10,000. That was a difference. So managing things like that, 80% of all medical bills, Josh, are incorrect. There's discrepancies on them. It could be something as simple as they charged you 5 times for an aspirin. But they're wrong. And so having that advocacy team to be able to go out and, I'm going to use a strong word, fight, negotiate, whether they're doing it up front or after the fact, it works. Yeah. And we do that with everybody.
Yeah, not only is that saving money for the actual clients, but I think that, like you've said, is one of the biggest reasons you can keep your rates low, is that you're saving money for the carriers too, and they know it. They know you're out there.
And it's one of the things, Josh, it's still about reminding the contractors, because they'll be with you and they'll forget. I mean, they got a lot going on. So you get a year out, 2 years out, and they forget that benefit's there. Yeah. And somebody might get a bill that's large, and we just say, don't panic yet. We're going to work on that, and we do. And we have an incredible success rate. I mean, last year alone, I would say we were close to, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million in medical savings for our customers.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, I do my work because I'm truly passionate about this industry. I love being able to provide insurance benefits and solutions to small business owners, to contractors that, quite frankly, didn't think they could afford it.
Yeah. So, I hear it. I've heard this story, and I know your story, but I always find it a pleasure to kind of see your passion for this space, see how you're building solutions, and the estate planning is just a new example of those same types of things, where you're building things for what the clients think they need, and for what you're kind of looking ahead to what they need and don't even know to ask for yet. And building that, helping them build that future and protect that future that we're always trying to help contractors reach. Build generational wealth is great, but if you don't protect it, then you've lost a lot of that value and that hard work. So I always appreciate the things that your team and Realm are doing for this community, and the products that you guys built for this team.
Well, thank you. That goes both ways. Yeah. I mean, the education that you provide to these contractors, the content to be able to help them understand whether they're going to be a new investor or whether they're already in the business, is invaluable. And again, I even learned something as a vendor. I try to sit in the sessions as much as I can because, again, this is my passion. This is our space, and I'm not going to say we don't do other things, but this is really our space.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. So.
No, we're not going anywhere, for sure.
Perfect. So the last question I always like to ask people is, favorite movie, favorite TV show you're watching right now. You can choose either one, whatever pops up.
All right, well, all right, so my wife and I typically watch something together. Yeah. So let me back up. So we had never watched a series until a few years ago, one of these long-going series. We watched Bloodline. We loved it.
I still haven't watched it. It's apparently great, yeah.
It is really, really good.
Yeah.
But that hooked us on series, obviously, Yellowstone, those kind of things. Yeah. But I'm watching one right now. My wife's been out of town taking care of the grandkids, so I started it.
I was about to say, does she know you started it?
She does, but it's one that she will not like because it can get kind of violent.
Yeah, I know those shows where it's like, I make the executive decision, I'm watching this without you.
Yeah, so now I've discovered I have a show that I'm going to watch whenever I'm traveling to events.
Okay, yeah.
And it's Lioness.
That's one of those shows that, what is it, Peacock or or Paramount?
No, it's on Paramount Plus.
I swear that there's shows like that are studded, star-studded casts that just appear. There's just too many streaming networks now. But I hadn't watched it yet, so it's good to hear that it's worth checking out.
It's actually good, but I will say it's very, very violent. Because it's got the CIA, the hidden people that we don't know about, but we know is there.
We know stuff's happening.
And their job is not to just apprehend, their job is to take them out.
So it's not subtle. They're doing it.
No, it's a pretty good show.
Perfect.
Yeah, Taylor Sheridan, obviously with all of these shows that he's doing right now are great. I've been watching all of his stuff, so have a good time with that.
All right, well, I'll take the recommendation, see if my wife likes it.
Probably will not.
Perfect. All right, Roland, well, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you for being here and answering all these questions and telling your story.
I really appreciate you so much. Thank you.